monumental miscellanea, and funerary paraphernalia. It's Archaeodeath.
Hello everybody, welcome to my Archaeodeath Thursday Live with me, Professor Howard Williams. And it's good to see you all back for another exploration in the world of archaeology. And this time we're heading to early medieval Wales, because as a discipline, early medieval archaeology, the archaeology of northwest Europe in the 5th to 11th centuries, has received over the last 50 years, has really evolved as a sub-discipline of its own, addressing key social, economic, political questions, the history of the changing religious context of societies. After the breakup and beyond the bounds of the former Roman Western Empire, looking at how they transform and adapt from basically the migration period, the 5th, 6th century, up to the end of the Viking Age and the Norman phenomenon of the mid-11th century. And as well as new perspectives and fresh approaches, there's been innovative methodologies and lots of brand new data been pouring forth from survey work, maritime archaeology, landscape archaeology, settlement archaeology and burial archaeology. And there's some really good synthesis for Britain of the archaeology of this period, and there's a range of good introductions. But what we haven't had until now is a single book that tries to synthesize the archaeology of early medieval Wales. And late last year, published by Oxford University Press in hardback only, and therefore hardly cheap, is Professor Nancy Edwards, who's Professor Emerita from the University of Bangor and an honorary professor at Cardiff University, has produced Life in Early Medieval Wales. And this book is a first real synthesis of the archaeology of and some of the history and place names too for early medieval Wales. And I thought for tonight's live I would simply review it, because I've been sent a review copy, actually 2 review copies, because I'm reviewing it once for a popular archaeology magazine called Current Archaeology, and I'm reviewing it a second time for a more academic journal context, for the journal published by Wiley, Early Medieval Europe. And I've already the Current Archaeology review is already published in the magazine, and I thought that would be a way of reading that out would be a way of introducing the book. And then I will reflect on some specific aspects of it and further aspects that will go into my as yet unwritten second review for early medieval Europe. So let me read out the review that I've composed for Nancy Edwards' Life in Early Medieval Wales. Life in Early Medieval Wales is a truly stupendous achievement in synthesising and evaluating early medieval archaeology. A first for Wales. Nancy Edwards deploys concise prose and draws on the experience of a lifelong career teaching and researching early medieval archaeology to produce a comprehensive, in-depth, well-structured, balanced and timely review of the archaeology of Wales from the decline and collapse of the Roman province of Britannia to the end of the Viking Age. Setting the scene, Edwards begins by producing a useful survey of the history of past research and the fragmentary written sources in Chapter 1, as well as a consideration of the Welsh landscape and how early medieval people reckon time and social memory. That's Chapter 2. Next, she deftly handles the fate of late Roman Wales in Chapter 3 before assessing both the legacy of Roman rule and Irish settlement, Chapter 4. The second part of the book comprises 3 chapters reviewing the settlements and material culture of the 5th to 11th centuries AD. We are introduced to evidence for hill forts and promontory forts, lowland high-status settlements and rural farmsteads. That's Chapter 5. Next is a synthesis of evidence for farming, health and diet in Chapter 6, before evaluating the evidence for making, trading, using, wearing things, Chapter 7. So the portable material culture of early medieval Wales. The third section comprises a quartet of chapters exploring the evidence of Christian churches, inscribed stones and stone sculpture, as well as burials and cemeteries, holy wells and trees, and relics and reliquaries, Chapter 8, and evidence for pre-Christian and Christian burial and commemoration, Chapter 9, Christian sites and landscapes, Chapter 10, and ritual and belief, Chapter 11. In the penultimate chapter, 12, Edwards tackles themes that interconnect the previous chapters by considering power and authority in the Welsh landscape, as well as incorporating an evaluation of the Viking impact. An extensive conclusion draws together key arguments and presents avenues for further future research, Chapter 13. Nancy Edwards has achieved a publication that evaluates the story so far, in which academic, commercial, governmental and museum archaeology, but also community archaeology projects are providing an ever-growing body of knowledge. This book thus sets the foundation for research on the archaeology of early medieval Wales for decades to come. So that's me doing a very positive review of this book for a popular audience, because while it is brand new and written for an academic audience, any student or scholar of early medieval Wales should get this book. Whether you're interested in, there won't be much for you on sort of myth and legend and all the stuff that gets the high attraction of TikTok followings about early medieval Wales, because most of that is based on far, far later sources and folklore and legendary evidence. This is about what people did and how they lived in the landscapes of Wales, and it really is I learnt a lot from reading it, and I'm supposedly an expert on this period. There's so much new research and excavations that have taken place that have yet to see the light of day or have only partially known, and it really pulls together evidence in a comprehensive fashion for the whole of the nation. And in so doing, the book really does do something different and distinctive. So that's really what I wanted to tell you about in this live, and to also to just discuss the fact that while that's all well and good, with a sale price of £100, it's hardly affordable for the broader public, and that's why I think firstly there's now a need for a shorter synthesis archaeology that people will want to buy who aren't experts and have £100 spare to buy on an Oxford University Press hardback, and also why my Offa's Dyke Journal, which is about the Anglo-Welsh borderlands and its archaeology, is open access and free, and it's so important that while you can purchase paperback copies from the publisher ArchaeoPress, that the rest of the rest of it's available online for download. And it's frustrating that such a great new book is one of so many that sits behind a really expensive cover price and will only be accessible to probably a handful of scholars and academic libraries. That's no criticism of the author. This is the curse of current academic publishing models, that even if you get a publication grant, it will rarely allow the cover price to drop significantly. It's a really good, amazing first book, but equally it's rather frustrating that it is so expensive. So there is still room for a more popular synthesis to be written, and I think that's true of so many books that are coming out in archaeology. Unless you've secured a massive publication grant that affords open access publication. And even when it does, an e-book isn't for everyone. Despite publishers driving us towards e-books, I don't want an e-book. I've been just given 3 free e-books by Taylor and Francis to review. I haven't even opened them. I don't want to open another bloody PDF or website to read a poxy book with hyperlinks. I want the physical copy. And I think people still value the physical copy of books, so they can explore it, sift back and forth, and really sort of engage with the scholarship. But anyway, so that's one criticism or problem with books like this, is they still have really high cover prices. And the other point I would say is that these books, despite this being actually visually very strong, there are colour images throughout. So there's a early medieval inscribed stone, and while there are maps, it is still visually too poor to be adequate to show the nature of the sites in map form, in photographs. You know, there's good maps to show you sort of the distribution of sites. There's still a lot to be desired about the number of photographs and images. So it's one of the early medieval enclosures, enclosed secular churchyards. You know, there's a lot here that is good. Plans of cemeteries, for example. But really, I'm craving more. And I think students and scholars need a lot more visual. And I don't think these kind of books really do justice to the nature of the material. They're very text heavy and image, not poor, but image light, despite a big book like this having over, I would guesstimate, 100 images. Oh, they organised them by chapter, but I would say we're looking at about 100 there. I think it needs about 200-300 images to make this effective. So it's too expensive, and it's also too visually light. And the third criticism of the book, I would say, is that it's obsessed with the modern county boundaries and national boundaries of Wales. This was the period where Wales was forming, and to take the modern border of Wales as the edge of analysis with only occasional references to sites in England is a bit bizarre and silly in today's world. And there are patterns and parallels, not only with sites in England, but also with the Isle of Man, Ireland, and the Cornish Peninsula, Cornish and Devon Peninsula, the Southwest Peninsula, that could have been explored further. Although Nancy, as an author, knows that material and does make reference to it repeatedly, we've still got a very myopic take. And this is true of many studies of early medieval England too, Anglo-Saxon England. Many studies of Anglo-Saxon England hardly ever mention Wales. And it shows how the national borders still configure and dominate our thinking about a period where there was no Wales, really. There was no England in a modern sense, a political and cultural sense. And these are polities and ideas that are floating around, ethno-linguistic terms, but there is no Wales in, as I've done a series of videos about early medieval Wales. As I said, the Cymry, the people of the Brythonic speaking peoples of Britain, were not simply in the Southwest Peninsula and in Wales, they were also in Cumbria, they were also in Southwest Scotland, there were British speaking people right up to Dumbarton and across to Dunfermline and places like this. Am I thinking of Dunfermline? Is that the right D? Anyway, into that Midland belt of what is now Scotland, and of course in Brittany too, and we have to think therefore that this kind of the way we write these histories about England, Scotland, and Scottish archaeology still has a fixation with Scotland too. It doesn't really help, and the island context of Britain is perhaps more constructive as a frame of reference, or Britain and Ireland and the islands associated with it. But still, anyway, I can't criticise Nancy for that, because so many books before her have been obsessed with England to the exclusion of Wales. It'd be a bit rich and unfair of me to criticise her for doing the same, to give Wales the attention it deserves. So that's my little book review for you of Life in Early Medieval Wales by Nancy Edwards, published 2013 by Oxford University Press. And you can read my review, which I've read out to you, in Current Archaeology magazine. And also in, I've got forthcoming, I'll be writing a more critical review, not of the ideas, but of some of those broader contexts for the journal Early Medieval Europe.
If you've enjoyed this Archaeodeath video, why not check out the Archaeodeath blog at howardwilliamsblog.wordpress.com.